Hi guys, Richard Liew here, editor at NZ Entrepreneur magazine, and today I'm stoked to be talking to the founders of a fintech company called Tax Traders, and I'd like to welcome Josh Taylor and Nicola Taylor. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks, Richard. Great to be here.
For the people watching and who may not have heard of Tax Traders, can you just give us, I guess, the elevator pitch? What is it you do? And and who do you work with? Who are your customers?
So Tax Traders is a fintech company, and we provide tech solutions for New Zealand businesses to make provisional tax your friend. So we believe that every New Zealand business is unique, and we believe that every New Zealand business should pay tax in a way that suits you best. Typically, provisional tax has been a real problem for business, but actually we believe that provisional tax should be a real tool for business. And in New Zealand, we've got pretty helpful tax legislation that enables real benefits to be unlocked for New Zealand business. But that's been really cumbersome, it's been really time consuming, it's been really complicated. So what Tax Traders does is we take that tax legislation, we take some really clever technology and software, and we unlock those benefits for all New Zealand businesses. What that means in effect is that New Zealand businesses can pay their provisional tax when they want, and they can pay it how they want. They can catch up on a missed tax payment, and they can even grab cash back if they decide that they've paid that tax, but in hindsight, actually, maybe they paid that too soon. So there's a bunch of cool things that we can unlock for New Zealand businesses when they use our products.
So with the software, is it the businesses, the end users themselves, for example, that sign up directly, or do they have to go through, say, their accountant who would use your platform?
Well, it's quite exciting time for us right now, because up until now, it has been something that you've had to do through your accountant, and you've kind of been reliant on your accountant actually identifying the opportunity and putting that in front of you. What we've got with TaxPay, which is our latest offering, which we've already got in market, and we're progressively rolling that out, is it actually puts the access to the service in the hands of the actual SME business. So they're obviously the ones that know their situation best, and they're the ones best able to identify how and when tax payments are going to really empower their business rather than slow it down. So we're excited about, it's no longer just an accountant only thing, it's for direct to SMEs as well.
At a practical level, let's take the example of, say, provisional tax.
Yep.
Whereby, is it 3 times a year, I think, or 4 times a year, you've got to estimate, sort of based on how well you've been doing in terms of, your profit projections, and then take a bunch of cash and give that to the IRD ahead of time, ahead of the time where at the end of the year you do the final wrap up.
Yep.
And obviously those tax payments for small businesses especially can be a real sort of cash flow headache.
Yeah.
So with TaxPay, can you tell us how, what are some of the things that you can do to help business owners sort of just level out that cash flow?
What they'll find with the software is ahead of every provisional date, and in fact, at any point in the year, they can basically just jump into their TaxPay account and see how much has IRD expected me to pay by this point in the year, and how much have I actually paid. So and you've got a bunch of different ways of slicing and dicing it to basically speed your payments up or slow them down. You can look at lump sum payments, you can look at kind of table mortgage type payments. So you're converting 3 lumpy payments into 12 or 18 even monthly payments. There's almost an infinite, infinite number of combinations. But that's all about providing, like Nicola said before, every business is unique. So therefore, every business needs a unique solution.
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of recent examples. A forestry exporter paid a big tax bill right before lockdown, about a year ago, and then they weren't able to export any of their products because obviously the ports were closed. They actually, they were really stuck. They tried to access some funding, some working capital from their bank. That didn't work. So they talked to, because they were with TaxPay, they reached out. They actually grabbed their tax back, and they used that to bolster their working capital. They got through that tricky part of their business cycle, and their tax liability was still met with the IRD. So that was a really great example of them using their provisional tax as a tool to help them get through that time.
Let's take some time, and I want to dig into a bit about the sort of, the backstory around how you came up with the idea for tax traders and now tax pay. Were either of you, did you have entrepreneurial experience beforehand? Had you built businesses before?
I think life's an entrepreneurial experience, isn't it?
I mean, I think, look, on that one, I think we both had family businesses in the backstory. So Nicola's granddad, he had a local business in Newmarket. I had my grandparents and my parents both had businesses. So I think that probably seeded something, and we certainly both had some latent entrepreneurial tendencies there.
But I think like many good Kiwi startup stories, ours really started with a redundancy. So Josh was made redundant, which was fairly traumatic, and so that was a great opportunity for us to sit down together and think, what might we do? We're both lawyers, and so we actually looked at the tax legislation, and you know what, we thought there's something that's not quite right here. This tax legislation in New Zealand is designed to create flexibility and benefits for all New Zealand businesses, but it's not. It's only providing those benefits and that flexibility for big corporates. That we didn't think that was okay. We're really interested in a tax system that's fair, that's transparent, that's accessible, and we weren't seeing that. So we thought, oh well, maybe we can do something here. Maybe we can combine our legal background, our tax knowledge, and our entrepreneurial drive. Maybe we can create a solution here. Maybe we can do something to help all New Zealand businesses flourish and grow. Maybe we can be part of their success. So we sat down on the kitchen table in Onehunga, kind of sketched out a bit of a business plan. We sold our home. We had 3 small children. I think we had 2 small children. I think I was pregnant with our 3rd. We sold our home. We put all our life savings in to the new business. We put Josh's inheritance in. It was all on the line. We went with our income for 18 months. We lived on our savings. We didn't have really any parents or kind of backup that could help us at that time. We lived in a friend's house. we started selling things like motorbikes, and it was getting pretty grim. I can see you're smiling, Richard. It was getting down to the wire. I think we got down to the last couple of $1,000s to our name, with 3 small children. So yeah, it was pretty grim. We were working really long hours, and really at the last minute, the business started to come right. We started to bring in some revenue, and it's been a fairly consistent growth story since then, not without its challenges and its ups and downs, but we've known that there's a successful business model in there, and we've it's been a fun ride.
It's just really cool that you can look back at that and say it was a fun ride.
It was, it's good though, because you really know what you're made of, and you really know what together you are kind of capable of, and you kind of think if you can get through that, well, there's probably nothing that you can't do.
And also, it's surprisingly that when we've had the opportunity to sit down with other business owners like ourselves, the stories are surprisingly similar. Actually, when you get you don't often get the chance to unpack and hear those stories, but there's a lot of similarities there for a lot of people.
And you'd have experienced like that yourself, Richard, in your business endeavors, and yeah.
But certainly an interesting ride, and let's talk about working together as a husband and wife team in a moment. But from a practical point of view, so you sort of mentioned there, Josh, you were made redundant, so it's like sort of the catalyst for reassessing things and thinking what you're going to do from there.
Yeah.
And Nicola mentioned, you had some queries around how tax legislation was set up, but not necessarily operating. So from the time that you started investigating that, you had an inkling of an idea about, and maybe an idea about how you could fix that problem, to the time you actually came up with a solution or a service that you could offer people and start charging money.
Mm-hmm.
How long was that period, and what was involved over that time, going from idea to actually getting a paying customer?
Well, it was in August that we first started thinking about this, of a year. It was probably in March that we, I guess, had a platform, but the legislative framework was there, Richard. So that was there. We just didn't think that it was operating to the benefit of all taxpayers for a variety of different reasons. So that was August. We had the idea. March, April, we started trading, but then it was another year really before we had revenue coming in. Is that how you remember it?
Yeah, pretty much, and that's probably just, there are some nuances of the industry we operate in. You tend to be, there's a lead time. You need to be in the market for a number of months before you actually start hitting some of those revenue opportunities, and so that's sort of why there was a bit of that 12-month lead time there.
Mm.
Yeah, as I say, everything takes twice as long and costs 3 times as much as your best guess.
Yes, you should see our first business plan that we put together. We certainly thought we were going to be making a lot more money a lot sooner than we actually did.
What was the process like in terms of actually acquiring your first customers? Because you were both lawyers. That doesn't necessarily mean you had any sales experience, so to speak. But I'm assuming it was you guys who went out and knocked on doors and talked to customers.
So I was probably the chief sales guy in the early days, and that was probably, I'd spent some time in banking, so I had a little bit of sales experience, probably just enough to be dangerous, and I had a few connections, and so we leaned on the connections we had to both to sort of validate what we were trying to do, but then once we had that sense of we've got some validation around, we think there's something here. It was just a good old-fashioned shoe leather, pick up the phone. They used to joke when we started out as lawyers, you get thrown the yellow pages for those who remember, you get thrown the yellow pages on day one and get told to go and drum up business. Well, that's kind of how we did it. We got out there, started talking with people, and look, it was, you have some early adopters on day one, but you do have a lot of people that say, hey, come and talk to us in 6 months, talk to us in 12 months, and that's just life. That's the way it goes. Thankfully, we had enough early adopters, and I think the nice thing you experience as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, is there's actually a group of people out there that actually want you to succeed. They actually get a kick out of helping you, because somehow they feel like they're buying into the dream, and they're part of that. They're part of that story too.
Yeah, so the generosity of Kiwis is astounding. They're so willing to give their skills, their experience, their encouragement, and the companies that came on board in the early days. You'll never forget them. You will never forget them. And we talk about them. They're in our playbook. They're like the heroes of our story. And people like Robin Oliver, who was the Deputy Commissioner of Inland Revenue, him and Mike Shaw, Keith Smith, these people that came on board, supporting a couple of basically young kids from the suburbs who had this idea. You'd never forget those people. I mean, they're still with us. They're on our board of advisors. That actually means a huge amount. But the people that gave you a go are really etched in your memory, and the kindness and the generosity of so many Kiwis is really something.
I think it's really testament to the, entrepreneurial spirit and commitment on your guys' behalf. Did you raise any capital along the way?
No, we did it the old-fashioned way, which was sell the house and tip everything in, and it worked. I think there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. That's the way we did it. I think you've just got to look at the cards in your hand at the time, and you make a call. And it worked. So.
Yeah, I don't think a capital raise is off the table in the near future. We'll see how we go.
Now, can we talk a bit about software?
Yes.
I'm assuming none of you had software development experience or done anything like this before. So for other founders who are watching, who may be in the same position, so they've got the idea but no background or knowledge or ability to do any coding or build it themselves, what was the process you went through to get this done, and what advice would you have for others thinking of doing the same thing?
It's a really interesting question. It's a really important question, and it's probably something that we've done differently from most. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do this, but we've certainly done it differently. And for us, it was really important that our developers were in-house, that they were employees, and that they were part of the family, that they understood the purpose, that they lived and breathed the DNA, and that then when they were coding with our purpose, with our DNA, with our clients in mind, and that they weren't coding as contractors just doing a piece of work, and that they were actually, that there was a really holistic approach to that. Now that's a more expensive way to do things, but we think it creates a much better product. And again, when people come to tax traders, they're being valued as their whole selves. So whether you're a developer, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in sales, actually I'm interested in everything that you bring. And we've had many occasions where somebody who's in development has actually contributed a key idea to another part of the business. And we would have simply missed out on that if we had taken outsource your contractors, just get them to write code in another, building in another country as a contractor. So look, that's the approach we've taken. It's probably a different approach from others, but that was important to us. Probably I'd say the other thing that we got very, very lucky with is that the second person that we employed, Tim, who is also an owner of the business with us now, he came on as a CFO, as a kind of a finance role, but what we didn't know is that he also had a coding, not a coding background, but a coding bent. So he was able to bridge that gap between, say, finance, legislation, and code. And having someone who can do that, who's not a coder, but who can sit in that bridge position like an architect is extremely valuable, regardless of what industry you're in. So that would be another piece of perhaps advice is, yes, get your developers, but also get that person who can bridge between, say, the product side of things and the development side of things, because that's very important.
That's some fascinating insights as to the way you guys did it there that I haven't actually heard before.
Yeah.
And what stands out to me is that point you made about when people who are building your product feel like they are part of the family, they understand your customers intimately, they have it's in their DNA, as you point out, or that makes sense. That hopefully that will bear out in the end product, right? The quality, its usability, functionality, and if nothing else, built with love, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
and we have actually done it both ways. At points we have used like sort of external contractors, and for us there is a real difference.
Yeah,
we see the difference.
Well,
and so
to be honest, we started that way, didn't we? At the very outset, and then we came in-house and we've never ever changed since then.
That was a great decision.
Yeah, and we never would go outside again. I mean, we've got the most extraordinary people on our team, and our developers, you know, they don't want to make them. I mean, no one wants to make a mistake, but they actually know the consequences if they put something out there that's got a bug in it. Like they know the people that will kind of suffer, or that will be inconvenienced as a result. They know what that means to them. So it's not abstract, it's real. They're real people. Yeah.
And because of what we're trying to do in terms of making tax easy, being able to provide unique solutions for unique businesses, part of that is being able to respond to sort of feedback and questions and development needs of clients on a pretty frequent basis. And if you're using external contractors, that's just a little bit hard. It's a little bit hard, and that feedback loop is just a little bit more tricky. So I think it's been a key part of sort of reinforcing the business journey we're on, what we're trying to do. Having that resource in-house has really been a key part of our service delivery and value proposition for the client base.
Yeah, and sometimes our developers will go out with our salespeople and sit with our clients and hang out and, you know, meet them and see the end result of what they're developing in real life situations. Sometimes when our salespeople come back, you know, they're really excited. They've had a wonderful day out there, and they're full of different ideas, and they sit down and they say, hey, why don't we do this? And we could do this. And, you know, it's like that real time kind of feedback, which is really exciting. And that just like that constant kind of feedback loop. You just wouldn't get that if they were external. So we think it works really well for us.
Now, you guys have done a lot of things right and a lot of things wrong. And you know, there's a lot of people out there who would suggest, and I know some investors even who would suggest they would never back a husband and wife startup team. Others will also sort of say, hey, you know, it's a really difficult thing to work with your partner, your significant other, let alone actually building something from scratch. So can we dig in a little bit about what that's been like for you guys? And I'd like to just ask first, each of you, Josh, starting with you, what is the worst part of working and building a business with your partner, your wife?
It's a hard question, because just probably by nature, just my mindset, I really just don't focus on the worst aspect. I really don't. I don't focus on the worst aspects of stuff. I mean, I think if I'm going to say something that could be a worse thing, I would say that we both have really strong convictions about what the best way to do things is. And the great thing about working with Nicola is she's the smartest person I know, and there's no one else I would even consider working with, because there's no one else I trust more, and our skills are so complementary that we basically we can, you know, if we were in a firefight, you know, I love military analogies. So anyway, we just cover each other so beautifully. But we also have the courage of our convictions, and occasionally that means we can end up on opposite sides of a view on something, and it's really hard. It can be really hard to talk each other down. If Nicola's really convinced about something, and that's the way to do it, and I've got a different view, it's going to be. We just need to step back from that for a moment and then re-engage sometimes. But that's about all I can think of, really.
I'd just like to point out there for all the guys watching on how to answer a question about working with their wife. You've just set the bar. I love what you did there, and straight away turned it about into what you love working with Nicola about. So well done, mate. Now, Nicola, same question for you, and I'm going to reframe it a little bit. Okay, so not what's the worst thing about working with Josh, but what's the most challenging aspect for you about working with your partner?
Again, I wouldn't want any other co-founder. Josh is my favorite person in the world, and he's my favorite person to work with. So I wouldn't want anyone else. What's the most challenging thing about working with Josh? No. There are. I mean, about like him as a person, or about the fact that we're also married.
I think just that dynamic, you know, when you are married, because right there are situations in business.
Yeah.
Frank conversations need to be made.
Yeah.
Decisions with very high, you know, a lot at stake. You know, and from what I know, having been in a similar situation, working with my wife, building businesses, and other couples I know, you know, that absolutely can really test a relationship. So, you know, do you find the same? Josh sort of mentioned, you know, that is one of the challenges.
Maybe.
What do you do to get through those times and, you know, preserve not just what is best for the business, because you've got to do right by the business, but also to maintain your relationship?
I think we're pretty good. I think we're pretty good at that. I think maybe the one of the challenging things is the sense that you're all in. There is no other career to fall back on. There's no other, you know, it's not like, I mean, I was a lawyer in a law firm before we did this. We don't have that as a, you know, as a fallback. There's no kind of banking career as a fallback. We're all in, and we're all in together. Maybe that sense sometimes that there isn't, you know, there isn't kind of a fallback. Maybe that sense that we're all in. I think sometimes
you just feel a bit claustrophobic.
Maybe a bit claustrophobic, yeah.
Like you can't step away, even.
Yeah, you can't step away.
Even if you want it. There's times when you want to step away, but you can't.
Yeah, you can't step away. I mean, we're pretty careful sometimes. When we go out for dinner or we go away, you know, we kind of say, hey, let's not talk about the business and let's not talk about the children. I mean, don't get me wrong, we love those two things. I mean, we love the business and we love our children and we love talking about those, but sometimes it's a good discipline to actually say, let's not talk about the business, let's not talk about the children, let's talk about each other, let's talk about you know, let's talk about things that we want to, other things that we want to do, let's talk about each other, let's like kind of connect like that. And I think when you live a busy life, there's lots of things you need to do, right? You need to treat every opportunity you get as an opportunity, as date night. So you're at a function, it happens to be a work-related function, well, you know, we're going to treat that as a date night. Or let's be really intentional when we're with our children. We have a really integrated approach. Our children at the office quite a lot with us, or we carve out time for one-on-ones with them. Yes, we work late, yes, we work hard, but yes, we're at their assemblies when they're getting awards, yes, we're at their sports games, and you know, that kind of thing. So we try and have a bit of a, we have quite an integrated approach there. We'll try and grab a coffee during the working day. So doing lots of those little bits and pieces and being intentional about that. We're very intentional with our diaries. We also have a lot of help to run our lives, you know, with three busy children and a busy business. There's absolutely no way that you know, I'm in any way a kind of a superwoman. There's a lot of help that goes on to keep kind of the family ticking along and the business ticking along. So there's all of that kind of thing that really helps.
That's really cool, and thank you so much for those insights, because I know a lot of people, again, watching and maybe who are in business with their significant other, you know, there's some real some big considerations to take into account, and some of those things that you mentioned about what you can do to look after not just the business but also each other and your relationship, I think are really, really useful.
I think Nicola really picked up on something that's actually quite key there. It's not working with your significant other is not the problem. It's actually, are you committed to working on whatever issues come up with whoever your co-founder is?
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is that if it's your significant other and you want it to work, you really have to work on those issues. And so it's actually in a way, we've kind of gone all in on our relationship as well, because actually, if we want it to work, we have to keep on working this out. Whereas I think the temptation can be for some co-founders, if they don't have some of that extra that extra pressure to make sure that it works. You can avoid facing into some of those issues, and you can sort of pretend they don't exist and ignore them. And you get 2 or 3 years down the track, or the pressure comes on, and suddenly you realise we haven't dealt with some of those issues, and that's where the problem comes from. It's not husband and wife per se, or it's not family business, or it's not anything else. It's, are you willing to put in the work to work through things or not?
Yeah, I mean, there's pretty good research about the importance of co-founders. Some of the Y Combinators, some of the incubators, they won't take a startup unless you've got a co-founder. There's good data on this, right? About why startups need co-founders. So the question is, who are you going to choose as your co-founder? And then, like Josh says, how are you going to invest into that relationship so that you get the benefits out of that co-founder, whoever that person happens to be?
Yeah. Well, Josh Taylor and Nicola Taylor, husband and wife duo behind Tax Traders and at Tax Pay. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having us, Richard. Real pleasure.